Hey guys, welcome back to the meanest doll in the world. We're going to read our next chapter, actually our last chapter and a half. We'll finish the story today. When we left off, Nora had come into Kate's room and was pretty sure she saw a doll, Mimi, moving. And Mimi crashed to the floor, and the dolls think that she might be in doll state, and so they're waiting to see what happens after 24 hours. So let's go ahead and finish the story. Kate did not move Mimi from her desk. All the next day, Annabelle watched both Mimi and the clock. She expected just about anything to happen at 2:30, especially since the Palmers had decided to spend the day across town with Kate and Nora's cousins, so the house was empty of humans. The very last thing Annabelle expected Mimi to do was nothing, but that is what had happened at 2:30, nothing. "Are you sure Kate's clock said 2:30 yesterday?" Uncle Doll asked. "Positive." The dolls watched Mimi for another hour, and still nothing happened. She lay on Kate's desk in the position in which Kate had dropped her, an arm flung over her head, one leg across the other. When Kate went to bed that night, Mimi continued to lie motionless on the desk. She was still there in the morning. As soon as the Palmers had left the house, the dolls and Tiffany and her parents once again gathered in the parlor and regarded Mimi. "What do you think?" asked Annabelle. "It's been lots longer than 24 hours. "She hasn't moved a muscle," said Auntie Sarah. "Maybe she got hurt when she jumped off the shelf," said Bobby. "She doesn't look hurt," replied Mama. "I don't see any cracks. She's all in one piece." After this, the dolls were quiet for a very long time. Finally, Annabelle decided to say a scary thing she'd been thinking. "Do you suppose she could be in PDS, permanent doll state?" Nanny gasped and her hand flew to her mouth. Annabelle glanced at Tiffany. The girls were talking to one another again, but in a cautious way, because they had not yet discussed their fight. "PDS," said Tiffany. "I don't know. How can you tell if someone's in PDS?" "Let's go poke her," said Bobby. "Bobby," admonished Nanny. "Well, someone has to take a look at her." Reluctantly, the grown-ups agreed. And in the end, everyone except Nanny and baby Betsy made their way across Kate's room to her bed, and finally onto her desk. They tiptoed through the scattered pencils and markers, a slinky, and 3 china cats, and then they were standing over mean Mimi. For a moment, they nearly stared at her. Then Annabelle stuck her foot out and poked Mimi's head with the toe of her shoe. Nothing. Tiffany, feeling braver, leaned over and shook Mimi's shoulder. Nothing. "Mimi, wake up!" yelled Bobby. Nothing. "Is this PDS?" asked Tiffany. "I suppose it must be," replied Auntie Sarah. "So it's real," whispered Annabelle. "It's really real." She looked at her aunt's solemn face and felt as if a chilly wind were blowing through the bedroom. "I guess this is good for the dolls at BJ's house," she said after a while. "I guess," agreed Tiffany, looking shaken. Here's a great picture of the dolls all standing around mean Mimi, who's not moving. "What do you think we should do about her?" asked Mom Funcraft. "I'm afraid we can do nothing," replied Auntie Sarah. "We have to leave her right here where Kate put her." And there Mimi lay for 2 more days, in full view of the dolls, an uncomfortable reminder of things they did not yet understand. Chapter 18, Home Sweet Home Once Again. On Thursday morning, Annabelle attempted something for which she had not had the courage in quite some time. She left the dollhouse, walked down the Palmer's hallway to Nora's room, and knocked on the Funcraft's front door. The captain was again banished to the first floor, and Mimi continued to lie unmoving on Kate's desk. So Annabelle felt safe for the first time in a very long time. Her heart was heavy, though, and she knew she wouldn't feel better until she and Tiffany had talked about their fight. "Hi, Annabelle," Tiffany greeted her. "Hi," Annabelle replied. "Tiffany, we need to talk. Can we go somewhere private?" Tiffany looked around Nora's room. "How about the shoebox in the closet?" So they sat in the empty shoebox, which was lying on its side at the back of Nora's closet. "We need to talk, don't you think?" said Annabelle. "About Mimi?" asked Tiffany. No, about our fight. Yeah, said Tiffany. I knew that was what you meant. Annabelle drew in a deep breath and let it out slowly. Okay, she began. You see, I thought we were best friends. I thought so too, said Tiffany. Well, then why did you tell me and Mimi all those private things I told you? I know I didn't say not to tell anybody, but I thought you would understand that. But Annabelle, I didn't tell Mimi anything. I barely even talked to her. Well, then how did she know that I fell in the spider's web on the exploration with you and Auntie Sarah? And how did she know that I think that I always ruin things? Tiffany shook her head. I only said those things once, the night you and I were snuck up into the attic to talk. Tiffany had been frowning, but now her eyes widened. Oh, she cried, Annabelle! What? Remember when we heard that noise, and we thought maybe it was the mouse? I bet it was Mimi. I bet she was up in that attic eavesdropping on our conversation. And I bet the mouse we thought we heard at BJ's was Mimi crawling into the backpack. Oh, ew, exclaimed Annabelle. And then, Mimi is so sneaky. She was devious. Those other things she said about you and Auntie Sarah planning an exploration without me, we never planned an exploration without you. Mimi said you did, though. She also said that you said that I wasn't fun to be around, that I'm boring, and you were tired of hanging around with a fraidy cat. I guess she just made those things up. Of course she did, said Tiffany. I would never say anything like that about you. Don't you know that, Annabelle? You really are my best friend. Tiffany paused and looked thoughtfully at Annabelle. How could you believe such things? I guess, said Annabelle, because those are the things that I worry about. They're the things I'm afraid might be true. I wonder how Mimi knew all of that. She certainly was smart for such a horrible doll. Tiffany, I'm sorry I didn't believe you, and I'm sorry I called you a traitor. And I'm sorry I called you a liar and said you were my former best friend. You'll always be my best friend. And you'll always be mine, replied Annabelle. By the time Kate returned from school that afternoon, Annabelle and the dolls were in the places in which Kate had left them the night before, when she had tidied up the dollhouse. Annabelle was propped against the end of her bed, looking out into Kate's room. So she had a good view of things when Kate delicately picked up Mimi, studied her, and then called, Grandma Catherine! A moment or two later, Grandma Catherine appeared in Kate's doorway. Kate held Mimi out to her and said, Look what I found in my room last weekend. I don't know who she belongs to. She isn't Nora's, and I asked at school, and she isn't Harmony's or Ayana's or Rachel's. Nora asked Martha, and she doesn't belong to her either. Said Grandma Catherine. That's strange. You have no idea how she got in your room? Kate shook her head. Suddenly she was just lying on my floor. Nora thought she saw her jump off my bookcase. Grandma Catherine frowned, but all she said was, Well, I suppose you should take her to the Lost and Found at school. That seems like the best thing to do. Okay, said Kate. I'm sure she belongs to one of Nora's friends. On Friday morning, Kate stuffed Mean Mimi in her backpack and took her to school. When she returned that afternoon, she reported to Grandma Catherine that she had left the doll in the Lost and Found. Tiffany, said Annabelle that night, I had a horrible thought today. Tiffany put down the alphabet block she'd been tossing from hand to hand. What was it? Well, I was just wondering, what if Mean Mimi was pretending? What if she was fooling us and she isn't in PDS at all? What if she's still alive? Ugh, Tiffany shrieked softly. Annabelle, that really is a horrible thought. I know. Well, we can't do anything about it. Breathe in, breathe out. The truth is, Annabelle said, she probably is in PDS. That makes the most sense. Yes, said Tiffany, it does. And Tiffany, do you think about the dolls at BJ's house very often? Every day. I wonder what they're thinking now. What do you mean? I wonder what they think happened to Mean Mimi. After all, she's been gone for a long time. As far as they know, she just disappeared. I'm sure she didn't tell anyone what she was going to do. So all Waterfall and the others knew was that suddenly she wasn't around anymore. Do you think they think she's hiding? Do they think Callie lost her somewhere? I don't know, said Tiffany, But I bet they're feeling pretty comfortable. I bet they think she's gone for good. Annabelle smiled. I hope so. We know she's in the lost and found, and Callie won't think to look there for her, because she didn't take Mimi to school. You know who I've been wondering about? Asked Tiffany. Who? Technoman. Technoman? Why? I feel bad for him. But he was evil. No, he wasn't. Not really. He just had to act tough for Mimi. And you saw what happened when his helmet came off. He was embarrassed. It was like he'd been lying to everyone, and suddenly he was caught in his lie. But I don't think he's a bad doll, and I bet he got back in the bucket of action figures before BJ came home. I wonder if he's made friends with the other dolls yet. Annabelle shook her head. I don't know. You know what the sad thing is? No matter what happened to Mean Mimi, she probably thought she didn't deserve it. Well, if she's in PDS, she can't think anything, pointed out Tiffany. Well, no, but before that, before she jumped off the shelf. I'm talking about all her life. When she was here at the Palmers and everyone realized how mean she was, and we tried to trap her and everything. And before that, when she was at BJ's and she kept doing things to make the other dolls mad at her. It seems like no matter what she did or how many people reacted to her, she still thought she was better than everyone, that she was right and they were wrong, and that everyone was mean to her. Didn't she ever understand? Well, maybe not, said Tiffany. Remember Francine? Even after Miss Feldman caught her teasing Kate and reminded her of the class rules and made her apologize, Francine was still mean, as if it was Kate's fault that Francine had gotten in trouble. Annabelle sighed. I guess that's the way it is with bullies. They never learn. Well, maybe not with all bullies. Maybe just some. You know what, said Tiffany. I just realized that your idea worked. What? Remember you suggested that we do nothing about Mimi? You said not to poke a stick in a hornet's nest, and that if we left her alone, she would get into big trouble and do herself in? That's exactly what happened. Annabelle smiled. How did you know that that's what would happen? Well, because Annabelle is a thinker, said Auntie Sarah from her room. I'm sorry, girls, I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. That's okay, said Annabelle. Come downstairs, Auntie Sarah called. It's time for a talk. Another talk? Tiffany whispered to Annabelle with a small groan. I think this one will be more pleasant than the one about our fight, Annabelle said. Annabelle and Tiffany followed Auntie Sarah all the way downstairs to the parlor, where the rest of the dolls were gathered. We need a family meeting, announced Auntie Sarah. Can I come to a doll family meeting? Asked Tiffany. You're part of the family, Mama replied, and Tiffany grinned. I just want to say, Auntie Sarah began, that I believe we owe Annabelle a thank you and an apology. For what? Asked Bobby. A thank you for showing us a wise way in which to deal with the menace, and an apology for not putting more faith in her ideas. Annabelle was exactly right about Mimi, and I think we should recognize that. Annabelle, I know sometimes you worry that you're not as daring as Tiffany. Or you, she added. Or me, or as brave as Bobby, Auntie Sarah continued. Or the Funcrafts, added Annabelle. Or the Funcrafts, but you have other strengths. You have a good brain, and you put it to good use. And you have a good heart, said Papa. Yeah, said Bobby, but he smiled at his sister. And you're a very good friend, said Tiffany, even if we fight sometimes. All friends fight sometimes, said Uncle Doll. Annabelle went to bed that night thinking warm thoughts about friendship and her good brain and heart. The warm thoughts stayed with her for the next morning while she lay stiffly in the dollhouse as Kate got dressed. This was often Annabelle's worry time, and today she was tempted to worry about what might happen if Mean Mimi weren't in PDS after all, if she'd been doing a very good job of faking, and might one day return to the Palmer's house in Kate's backpack. But she reminded her good brain to think positively. The warm thoughts were still with her later in the morning when the Palmer's house was quiet, and Auntie Sarah said that she thought it was high time she returned to the attic to begin work on her spider farm. Now that the menace is gone, she said, does anyone want to come with me? I bet Tiffany will, said Annabelle. And you? Asked Auntie Sarah. She thought for a moment. Well, I'm still afraid of spiders, but I do have an idea about how to harvest their silk. Wonderful, said Auntie Sarah, clapping her hands together. You may show us tonight." But that evening, before Annabelle had a chance to show off her idea, Nora snagged her and Tiffany and Bailey and plopped them down on the floor of the bathroom. "Time for Miami Beach a-go-go," she said. Nora was once again dressed in her bathing suit and goggles and flippers. She ran water in the bathtub and tossed the fun crafts into the small waves. Then she placed Annabelle in the soap dish. "You can be the lifeguard," she said. Annabelle smiled to herself. So this time she had a role in Nora's drama. Maybe she wasn't floating or bobbing with the fun crafts, but she had been assigned an important job. Annabelle gazed ahead of her at the corner of the bathroom and thought she detected a small movement by the floor. She stared hard and realized that a spider was spinning a web there. A spider she thought she recognized. Annabelle thought of Auntie Sarah's spiders and how they work quickly and diligently so that they are able to spin web after web. Spiders are tenacious, Annabelle realized. They start new webs and work, and if the webs are damaged or destroyed, they simply repair them. I'm tenacious too, she thought, and diligent. I watch and I wait, and my good brain and I are tenacious and diligent like spiders. Annabelle, in her spot in the soap dish, made a list in her head. Tenacious, diligent, a good brain, a good heart, a good friend. Then she added, a family who loves me, good friends in return. There was nothing boring about any of that. And that is the end. Hope you enjoyed it. If you are interested in the next two selections in this series, I'll send a message home because there are two more books in the series. The Runaway Dolls and The Dolls Lost at Sea, I believe is the name of the fourth one. But hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you next time.